Broadcasting live from the Gibson Community Music Hall in Appleton, Wisconsin. You're tuned into Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. We're the show that gives you an opportunity to call in and be a part of the show. Our call-in line is 920-358-0795. Core. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. We are doing a special broadcast tonight from the Gibson Community Music Hall in Appleton, Wisconsin, which brings me right into our next guest. I want to take a moment to introduce an author whose work is as raw, real, and refreshingly unfiltered as they come. Brett Newski is not just a talented musician, but also an honest and fearless storyteller. His book, Piss in the Wind, is a mix of hilarious and brutally honest reflections on life, mental health, and the twists and turns that come while making your own way through life. So if you've ever felt like life was just a series of odd and frustrating yet somehow funny moments, this book will speak to you. And let's give a warm welcome to the one and only Brett Newski.
Thanks, McNamara. That was real sweet. Thank you.
So congratulations, you're now a twice published author.
Self-published.
Do you think there's really a difference? I mean, you can say you know, if you're a musician, you put out your own album, you're self-published
No, at this
musician.
point, I mean, it is like, I would advise anybody self-publishes, puts out their own records. Like, it is great if like a massive company signs you and wants to distribute your work internationally, but most of the time, you make significantly more money and pay off the project quicker if you do it yourself, because the deals are just, you know, they're pretty one-sided. It's a tale as old as time, you know. You sell a book in Barnes & Noble, you maybe net like 80 cents or $1. So.
Well, and are you getting known as a author now? Are there people that know you as just an author and not a musician?
I don't know. Probably. I mean, the last book, It's Hard to Be a Person, was like a humor meets mental health book, which had absolutely nothing to do with music. So that kind of like opened some doors, which is cool. And I ended up like speaking on some college campuses and at a few high schools. And it just opened up a new lane, which I think it took a little pressure off the music for a year or two, because we're like, we could go into our Amazon account or our back end and be like, oh, we sold some books. We don't have to play an extra 5 shows this year, you know, or whatever it was. So that's been a nice thing. And it's just, that was definitely the least fun I ever had making a project. It's Hard to Be a Person, because it was like the most work, but I think it had the biggest payoff as far as it just reached so much farther than music. And unfortunately, mental health in America is completely shot. So I don't know. It just connected to the culture at the right time. And obviously, I'm trying to be silly, but it feels good to have like it be useful. You know, sometimes you feel like there's some musicians here. Sometimes you put out records and you're like, Spotify streaming, who gives a shit about music? There's 2 million records that come out a day, but it's harder to put out a book, you know. So I don't know.
You mentioned you've kept journals pretty much your whole later life. What was the factor that made you decide I'm going to release this as a book?
Well, I was reading a lot of travel journaling. I was reading a lot of Henry Rollins. Mike Dowdy put out a book, the guy from Soul Coughing, and I had all these journals, and they were mostly crap, but it was like a lot of notes and chicken scratch. But they were from all over these places. I lived in Asia for 2 years and did all these really weird DIY tours and made notes on it. And once I started like gathering it and putting it together, I was like, well, this could be like a pretty interesting thing. What if I make a book about like the weirdest places I've ever played? And that was kind of the premise of it. And just the freedom of long form writing is really, really fun. You know, with a song, you get like, you know, you get 3 minutes or you get 5 minutes. You know, it has to be concise, but just having like full pages to work out thoughts and then going back and trimming down things that aren't interesting. I just love the format, and it's been like the most fulfilling form of art for me, I think.
The book, it opens, I know we have a lot of people here that have read it already. It starts out with you going to overseas, and I love how you explain your mother in the book. Just this person that is full of worry.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it was a big step for you to leave the country the first time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I grew up, and my mom is like, I would say she leads the state of Wisconsin in worries per capita. And so she was always like, hey, Brett, America, it's the best. You know the narrative. America, number one, and America's awesome, whatever. But she was like, don't go overseas. You're going to get stabbed. You're going to get hit in the back of the head with a lead pipe in a back alley in Colombia. And she has been a champion about it for the most part. But the other day I was having dinner with her, and she was like she speaks her inner monologue out loud. Like she'll be like, no, okay, Brett, now if you're gonna go outside, put your lip sunscreen on. Make sure you put the or whatever it is. Like don't light a match in the woods because it'll start the whole state of Wisconsin on fire in the forest system or whatever. So I was like, Mom, it's all right. Like you don't have to catastrophize. And she just goes, Brett, well, I'm a total pussy. I'm Wisconsin's biggest pussy. And I don't know if she was doing a bit or not. Like she was like, and the Lord looked down on me and he saw me and he was like, that girl is a total pussy. And then she matched me up with your dad, who's I don't know if you can say the P word anymore. Maybe I'm canceled, but it's her words, not mine. And so she is self-aware of her worries, and she's a champion. And I don't know what the point of what this was, but I started traveling because she told me traveling was too scary, I think.
Well, and so this was your first big trip out of the country. You met a few friends that were there for school, and you guys ended up going to a football match.
Yeah, so this was basically like the first event I ever went to outside of the country. I went on a spring break. I had buddies working in a nursing program in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and the Argentine peso just crashed tremendously. So we went down there with US dollars, and we were getting like amazing, like top tier steaks for like $7, and we were just like 20 years old, living really nice. And we read in the guidebook, don't go to a Boca Juniors soccer game because it can be pretty sketchy, violent. It's a sketchy neighborhood. And so we're 20 years old. We're like, yeah, of course we're going to the Boca Stadium to see a soccer game. So we bought home team jerseys, thinking we'd be like safer and like protected. You go through the stadium through these like giant barricade concrete walls. I mean, it looks like a world war or something, like barbed wire. There's barbed wire separating the stands from the field because people run on there and streak or try to stab the other team's best player or whatever. So we get in there. The game's great. We hear later a dude dies in a fight before the game in some like hoodlum scrum. Anyway, the Boca Juniors win, the home team. So we're like, yay, don't fight us. And it starts raining, and we're like, man, it's been really nice out, sunny all day. And we look behind us, and there's just hundreds of the opposing team's section with dudes with their wieners out peeing on our heads. And the most demented part of it was no one was surprised. Like, this happens all the time when they keep the home team and the away teams on separate decks. But if you lose, you get peed on, I guess. I don't know.
Well, you mentioned your friend had to use the restroom at one point, and people were just peeing in the hallways of this place. And
yeah, the plumbing went out. Yeah, so and this building, this stadium was like designed. It was like a coliseum designed in 1901 with no plumbing or anything. So yeah, I mean, there was just people like peeing in the hallways. And as we exited the arena, we were just like wading through like rivers of urine that was like running down the stairs. Like I remember it vividly. Sorry.
Well, so that was 2008, and then 2010, you decided you were going to like just go for a longer period of time. You go into detail about some job interviews that it was quite humorous in the book. You have to read it to kind of hear the details, but you apply for some jobs. You go through that whole thing.
Yeah.
What was the driving factor that made you decide, well, I'm just going to go over there and wing it? Because you didn't really have like a plan.
Not at all.
Per se.
Yeah. No, I mean, I got out of school. I was going to all these job interviews, inside sales, and it spooked me pretty good because I was talking to like these guys in nice suits, and they're like, if you work hard, you can get to the top, son, or whatever. And And I was like, well, what do I do here? He's like, well, you'll just be in this office all day. And he showed me this office with no windows and just a little like desk, not much above from like my 7th and 8th grade classroom. And he's like, yeah, you just, you got the drive, man. You just be calling people all day, bringing in sales. And I went on a couple of those calls, and that spooked me pretty good. So I could live in Southeast Asia for like $10 a day, $12 a day at the time. So I was just like, I was officiating a ton of basketball games on the weekends to save up money. And, I was officiating like 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade girls basketball, and parents are just yelling at me like, you suck, you're blowing the game. But I saved up enough money, and then I went and I just started backpacking around Asia and started booking like these DIY shows along the way. And generally in the bigger cities, there would be like one kind of like indie or one or two DIY kind of promoters who would put on like rock shows or punk shows. And I've never really listened to much punk music, but I was just playing the acoustic guitar really loud and fast. And they're like, all right, that's folk punk. You're on the show. So it ended up becoming this really ramshackle tour around Hong Kong and the Philippines and Thailand and stuff.
When you got there, you bought a motorbike, and it got stolen from you almost immediately. Can you tell us about that?
So yeah, when I moved to Saigon after kind of circling around for 3 months because I was just like so lonely and weird, and I was like, I need to put down some roots. I loved Saigon, Vietnam. It was my favorite spot on the trip, so I was like, I'm going to move here. And I asked some people, I was like, how do you get around? And they're like, well, you got to buy a motorbike. And I was like, well, I don't have a license. They're like, who gives a shit? Like, you just bribe the cops, which that's another fun story. But so I was asking this girl at this cafe, there's this French Vietnamese girl, and she was like, well, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'll just sell you my motorbike for 4 million Vietnam dong. And I was like, well, I can't afford that. How much is 4 million Vietnam dong? She's like, oh, it's like $100. So I bought a motorcycle for $100 and then drove it around, wind in my hair. I was like the most freedom I've ever felt. And
this isn't like a big motorcycle. This is like one of those little tiny...
It's like a Honda Wave 330cc, the brand. I don't know. Yeah, it's not like a motorcycle. It's like a kind of a cheap, yeah.
Was it just a throttle?
Yeah, throttle, semi-automatic, whatever that means. And so I learned kind of how to drive it on the fly. And the next day, I needed a snack, so I parked at like a KFC, which was not even a real KFC. It was just a fake KFC because you can just rip off logos in Southeast Asia and no one enforces it, which is fun. And I came out after I ate a 20,000 Vietnam dong chicken sandwich, and my bike was gone. And I was like, I kind of flipped out. I don't flip out often, but I kind of lost it a little bit, and I was like, fuck. And it was just like, I just heard these kids laughing behind me, and it was like these two Vietnamese 8-year-olds, and they were like, fuck. And they were laughing at me. So I taught some local 8-year-olds the word fuck, I think. I deserved it,
Well, and I kind of jumped ahead a little bit there, too. Before you went over there for all this, you were trying to test the waters as being a journalist. And you went to Bonnaroo as a journalist. Yes.
Well, actually, I interviewed this man right here, Justin Bricko from the Blue Heels, when I was in my my college writing days. I wrote for this blog called Dane 101, and it was really fun. Like, I wrote for a bunch of blogs, and I don't think I ever got paid one time, but you could go to any festival in America you wanted for free and, cover the fest. And so I got a media pass to go to Bonnaroo in Tennessee, which is like one of the biggest, highest grossing rock and roll music festivals in the country. And I had just come back from Colombia, and I had smuggled in all these packs of cigarettes in the country because I was like, oh, I'll just sell these at Bonnaroo and just make money and make the whole trip doable. So I had like 20 packs of cigarettes that I bought for like 50 cents each in Colombia, and I'm like going around the tent sites at Bonnaroo, and I'm just like selling them so fast. Everyone's like, $10 for a pack of cigarettes at Bonnaroo? No way. So I sell them all in like an hour, and then I have one pack left, and I stumble upon this like pickup truck with these like really rough, like rural, Tennessee men. Like, these are grown men. and they're drinking whiskey in the back of a pickup truck, sitting on like a couch that's oozing foam, and guy's like, "Hey man, I don't got any money, but I'll trade you this bag of mushrooms for that pack of smokes there." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I don't know. How many mushrooms do I eat? I've never done mushrooms before." And he busted out, and it's like they look pretty neat. They have like orange tentacles and arms. Looks like Bill Nye grew them himself, you know. And he's like, "Man, you just eat the whole bag." And I was like, "All right, cool, man. Here's the cigarette." I'm like 21 years old. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I chow all the mushrooms. I'm like, "All right, see you guys later." And so I'm heading to the media tent because I have to like work. I have to like cover the festival for this blog. And I get into the media tent, which is literally looks like a 1940s circus tent, you know, red and white stripes. And things start to go pretty sideways. And you know how it is. You know, you guys all do mushrooms, right? It's like you don't want to be in a sweaty tent in the middle of Tennessee with a bunch of people. It's not a good thing. So I start to spiral. I kind of come to, and I'm just hanging out with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And it didn't all make sense, obviously, but I had to like look into the program to verify that he was actually in there. And it was indeed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was there promoting a book. So I was like, "Hey, Mr. Jabbar, I'm from Milwaukee." And he shook my hand and talked to him for a minute or two.
So what kind of stories did you write from that trip? Did you have any product to give to the publication once you got back?
Yeah. I came through for him in the end. If I was smart, I would have told that story and put that in the blog. But it was fun. I mean, it's like at the end of the day, it's like here's the deal: if no one's paying you, it's like, you know, I mean, I'll deliver for you, but there's less pressure, you know.
So this all took place before you went over there, and when you were actually over there, you're very detailed with some of the descriptions of how the buildings looked and just the life. Like it sounds like all the cities you were in were full of life for the most part. Did you have any intention of staying there for as long as you did once you got there, or did you have a time? Because I don't think you point out in the book if you had a set time to come back.
No, not at all. I mean, I was pretty lost. My kind of situation in Madison had really fallen apart. Like my girlfriend and I had split. My job fell apart. My band fell apart. So I was pretty lost and anxious and pretty depressed, honestly. So, but when I got there and just started kind of trying to make things happen, and like I was teaching guitar, and it was like I got work really fast, and the cost of living there is pretty low. So, you know, you're at what is this, 2011, 12, 13? It's like you're making $30 an hour in Asia in that time. That was a lot of money. So I could live really well. And then the thing that shocked me the most was how much time I had to work on art and stuff. So I was just writing songs all the time, journaling, being in my head and being a head case and being, you know, struggling. But a lot of time, you need time to make stuff, you know.
I want to read a little passage here from your book. I've written down just to kind of point out how descriptive. Okay. So it's on page 31 for anybody that's got a book. Rain still pouring down, the strong skeleted man karate chops away at my back, and I feel the full force of his above average biceps drive through me and into the busted ass chair. A rat pops out of the drainage pipe and steals a baguette crumb. Curious, it pauses and looks up at us before shuffling away. It's a brutal massage. The man clearly has no idea what he's doing. I eventually realize he's just an unemployed guy trying to make a quick buck. I can't tell if I've just been massaged or molested.
That's right.
So there's lots of interesting details like that. And I've asked you this before, but you can confirm again, you didn't sweeten up any of these stories. These all happened.
Not at all. No, it's everything in there actually happened, you know.
So the massage, that was pretty good detail right there, but were there a lot of people that were just trying to make a buck that you really had to be cautious, right, of certain things that you
for sure. I mean, like Vietnam, people are really sweet, and like the worst thing that can happen to you is maybe you get pickpocketted, you get ripped off. Like the Philippines are a bit more gnarly. That was like a bit like I ended up getting in like some sketchier scenarios there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like the U.S. dollar is like it's pretty strong over there. So people see you're like this tall, goofy, gangly white guy. They kind of want to tap you for cash. So and that doesn't happen as much. Like, but once you're off the backpacker circuit, you get a little more of the reality of the situation. I couldn't believe how sweet people were, considering we were at war with them, and just how nice and kind and passive they are, and how they'll engage with you if you want, but they'll also kind of leave you alone. So it was beautiful.
There's a story of kindness in the book. Your motorbike breaks down, and you just run into the right person at the right time. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so I bought this motorbike. I drove it from Saigon, Vietnam to Hanoi in the far north. I took like 35 days to do it. And, bike breakdowns happen all the time. And I broke down in the middle of this like rice field in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't even tell you what city I was near. So I just started pushing my motorbike to just the nearest hut. There was just this small metal hut. And this guy came out, and he was just this skinny Vietnamese guy with a mustache, and he had a giant mole growing out of his or giant hair growing out of his mole, because in Vietnam it's bad luck if you cut the hairs that grow out of your moles. So you'll see like these like really old dudes with like hairs down to their tits, And so I pushed the motorbike up, and the guy, I mean, there's obviously a language barrier, but the guy's like, oh, okay, and I'm just like, yeah, my bike's fucked. And he just starts like tearing it apart and like gets wrenches out his toolbox. His little kid's there watching, like mesmerized by the whole weird interaction. The kid probably never saw like a 6-foot gangly white guy before, I would believe. And he's just working on it. I'm like, oh, this guy's going to just rip me off super hard, because if you don't negotiate a price up front, like you got no chance. Spends like almost an hour on it, starts it up, it goes. He's like, oh, okay, good. And I whip out my Vietnam dong, to give him some money. And he's like, no. But he doesn't want any money, but he just wants me to smoke a bong with him. And he comes out of his house, and he just has it's a giant car muffler. And I'm like, cool, like this guy's the man, Build a showcase bong out of your car muffler. And so he lights it up, and he smokes it and like Snoop Dogg's it up in the air and like blows a couple triangles and shapes. And then he passes it to me, and the kid's like excited. And I'm like, I smoke it. And I thought it was like I thought it was going to be marijuana, but it was just the gnarliest, driest, like rice paddy tobacco of all time. And I just I couldn't breathe. I was just choking, coughing up all the smoke, like just brutal, horrible pain. And he's just laughing at me so hard. He just thought it was the greatest. And this kid's laughing at me as well. But it was once the dust cleared and the smoke settled, it was pretty cool. It was like it gave me a lot of faith in the road again,
And that wasn't the only time that bike broke down. It was a constant battle to keep that running.
Yeah. I'm pathetic with like maintenance and carpentry, and like my girlfriend Kate, who's here, just taught me how to change a tire like 3 months ago for the first time. Good job. And but yeah, I mean my gas gauge on my motorbike was broken in Vietnam, so I would just run out of gas all the time in like the middle of nowhere, and it was never a problem because like some dude would just see you and he'd be like, yo. And he would come and he would either push you on his bike. He'd like drive with his foot on the back of your bike and like push you to a gas station, or he would go get gas and then just kind of charge you a premium. And it was like a lot of guys doing that for like a side hustle.
Well, there are a lot of good people in the book. There's also some bad people. You were stopped at a police barricade, and that had to be a little bit scary being in a different country.
Yes, that was pretty spooky. I mean, just like, border crossings in general, real scary. Even if you don't have anything to worry about or nothing incriminating, it's just a spooky thing. Oh, thanks, homie. Driving up to Hanoi, the cops will come out in the middle of the road, and they'll just like, they'll have like a billy club or whatever, and they'll whack the front of your motorbike with it, which means pull over. And so this cop comes out, like smashes his stick on my bike, and I pull over. I'm pretty scared because I don't have any papers. I'm like technically driving illegally. And he's like, you, and he starts like pointing his finger, like smashing his finger into this paper, which is like a registration for a bike. And I was like, I don't have that. And he grabs my bike and he's like, oh, bike's mine now. However you say that in Vietnamese. And I was like, no. And I bust out my wallet and he's like, oh, very good, very good. And I was like, how much? He's like, 100,000 Vietnam dong. And I'm doing the math and it's like $5. It's like, there you go, sir. And I got my bike back. So my brother actually ended up moving to Vietnam. And the first advice I gave him was, dude, just run from the cops. They're not going to chase you.
Well, and you met some other people over there. Could you tell us a little bit about Sweet Chucky B?
Sweet Chucky B is one of the all-timers. So he was my roommate in Vietnam for a short while, and still one of my best friends to this day. He's like a 6'3", tall, gangly white guy from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And so he put me up in between lodging and stuff, and I had this cyst in my leg, and it was really bothering me. It was just like this. I had this big poofy kind of like bulge in my leg down by my ankle. And Sweet Chucky B's like, well, I made it halfway through medical school, dude. We'll just cut this out at my house. No big deal. And he's a smart guy. So I was like, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. And so he puts my leg in the sink and he ices it down. And he's like, B-Ret, you're doing great. Just look away, look away. And he's cutting into my leg. It hurts pretty bad. And I'm like, how's it going, Sweet Chucky B? And he's like, this thing's big. We're going to have to go to the hospital. So he fails. He puts me on his motorbike. We like tape up my bloody leg that's like oozing goo with like some like grocery bags and like some duct tape. We go to the hospital, and like you don't really want to go to the hospital in Vietnam, It's it can be a little bit wobbly. So we get to this place, it's like kind of looks like a prison camp, to be honest. There's like bars over the windows, big fluorescent lighting, like just not warm and fuzzy. There's people just everywhere, sitting all over the floors. It's packed. Sweet Chucky B slips the guard like 100,000 Vietnam dong, which is $5. The guy lets us skip the line, which was clutch. My leg is like bleeding. So we go into the back room. We're waiting there a couple minutes, and this guy comes out. He looks like a pizza delivery guy. He just has jeans and like a T-shirt with like Cheetos stains on it, like it. And he's like, "Hello, I doctor." So this was the doctor that was going to sew me up, and I laid down on the table. To his credit, he did a bang up job. Sewed me up in like 5 minutes. Had no issues, and then we were on our way. So. That cost $5 for that's like $1,000-$2,000 job in America, Do you
have a scar yet from that?
I might. Let's check it out after the show.
You bought a guitar for $50 there, which compared to some of the prices that you've been saying, 50 seems a little steep for a guitar. Do you still have that guitar?
Funny enough, McNamara, that guitar broke in half. Like halfway through the trip, because I was strapping it on the back of the motorbike and I was like going through the rain, and yeah, it just cracked in half one day. So
I try to imagine you on that motor. I picture like the smallest motorbike you could imagine. This is what I imagine you driving on with that guitar slung over your back. You've alluded to that. You kept the journals. You were using a laptop to type the journals, right? So I picture the laptop, and I picture another big bag full of clothes, and then like another big backpack with like other stuff in it. How much gear were you carrying around with you from city to city?
Yeah, I mean, not much. I had a big travel backpack and then the guitar, so it was doable. I mean, I didn't have like proper gear, like now I tour with guitar pedals and, try to make it actually sound good. But back then I was like, all right, let's plug into the DI and turn it up as loud as you can, and we'll just do an acoustic punk show. But I started to get like pretty severe back problems and stuff when I started touring more properly with gear and like trying to level up and like beef up the production a bit, because I didn't have, this is pre-Uber, so I would have to like take a big case of merch, a guitar, a backpack, and like get it to the train station, which even if it was only 4 blocks away, it would be like just punishing on my meat suit. So I had to start just like ponying up the cash for taxis and Ubers eventually. But you know, those first couple of years, you're making like $50 a show. Maybe you sell 50, 100 in merch. So there's no wiggle room.
Well, this is kind of off topic, but I've read your book 3 times. One time was just exclusively to see how many times you used the word wiener, and it was 7 times.
I'm a professional.
7 times you used the word wiener. So is that a word that is just in the top of the Newski, like kind of the frequent use word?
Yeah, I don't know. Wiener, it's, I don't know. It's just like, it's light.
It's a funny word.
Yeah, it's funny. It's, you know, I'm not going to say giant cock or, whatever. It's just wiener.
Do you have any reservation about the title of the book, putting the word piss in there, as far as people getting that on air, like news stations? Some news people have been pretty good about putting the title on. But
A couple, yeah, they'll bleep it out. A lot of places can't have me on because you can't say the word piss on the radio. It's like an old FCC law, from back in the day, which is so weird because it's like clearly like whichever overlords made that rule is like, you can't say piss on the radio, like went home and just did the most heinous things to their wives or whatever. I'm sure it was just savages, but yeah, you can't. So it's actually, yeah, it's I can't go on a lot of TV shows and stuff.
You went on a date over there, and you guys had an interesting date choice. Can you tell us about that?
I'm trying to think of the date.
You went to a gun range.
Oh, yeah, nice. I love how none of these stories have anything to do with music. But this is kind of like this is kind of why I wanted to do the book, is just like the weird stuff that happens between shows, So I was dating this Vietnamese Singaporean girl who also lived in Saigon, Vietnam. She was really sweet. She's like this tall, really brilliant. Like she was a web developer, so she could work from anywhere. Wait, what was I talking about again? What's the...
Yeah, the gun range.
The gun range, yeah. And she loved guns, which I should have seen as a red flag. And we had an off day. She was traveling with me in Cambodia. We played this weird gig, and she was like, "I want to go to the gun range, Brett. You take me to the gun range?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course. I've never shot a gun." So we get in this tuk-tuk, which is a little cart with a motorbike that kind of drags you around town, like kind of a DIY taxi. And we go out to the sticks, dirt roads, get to the gun range. There's nobody there. It's just us two and these 2 like pretty hard looking Cambodian dudes. One guy's like has no shirt on. The other guy's eye is just like going, like looking that way. And they're like pumped to see us. And they're like, "Oh yes, you." And they open this like metal sliding door. And they have all these like war weapons from however long ago, And there's just machine guns and AK-47s, and like we had heard that you could, if you had $200, you could shoot a cow with a bazooka, and we're like, that's not real. So my girlfriend at the time is like, yeah, I'll take the AK-47. She's like this tall. She takes this giant machine gun. She's like da-da-da-da-da, like shooting it at the range, like hitting most of the targets. I take like the noisy cricket from the film Men in Black. Remember that movie?
I do.
It's like this big, and I take a couple rounds, and we shoot the rounds, and the guy, like the leader, the alpha guy, comes out, and he's like, "You shoot cow with bazooka, $200." We're like, "What? It's real? You gotta be kidding me!" So we're like, "No, we don't have $200." So he looks super bummed, disappears, comes back. He's like holding a live grenade, and he's like, "You throw grenade into pond, $35. He's like, "That's a good deal." He's like, "They'll take it." I was like, my girlfriend was like, she was like, obviously wanted to throw the grenade. I didn't have any money left, so we couldn't buy the grenade for $35. But yeah, fired a gun for the first time.
That's great story, and the book is just chock full of them. You went to deals with music. You went to a karaoke bar with a couple girls, and karaoke is way different there than here.
Yeah, karaoke is really, it's a different animal in Vietnam, and I think most of Southeast Asia at least. It's like Here, like, you go to like, it's public and everyone's drunk and cheering and it's like a public event. There, like, you rent a little room. So I was in this town called Hoi An. I think it was called Hoi An. And I met like these two sisters and they were really nice and sweet. And like, I had no one to talk to. I didn't know anybody. So I was like kind of chatting them up and they're like, oh, you come do karaoke with my sister and me tonight. And so they took me to karaoke and you just rent this weird little like plastic room, no windows. And yeah, there's no like real punchline to the story, but we get in, we start singing. The mic is like, it's like a plastic Fisher Price mic. The speakers are blowing out. You know, the lyrics dance on this little like Nintendo screen. And I have a beer. They don't drink, so they just start drinking soda. And like 3 songs in, they're already 2-3 sodas deep, and they're just like having a full caffeine meltdown, but just like singing like Nirvana songs out of key at top volume. Like they would finish a song and then just smash like a can of Coke like on the ground. And I think that was just how they partied there.
You know, so you did some recording there as well. You recorded a couple songs with a gentleman named Hans.
Okay, so yeah, I was staying in this town called Pai in Thailand, and it's just this little mountain town where you can stay in a hut for like $4 a night. It's like actually a straw hut, and I was there way too long. I was just kind of burning out a bit, and they're like, well, there's this guy Hans. He's this German guy, good guitar player. He's got a studio in town, so you can rent his studio for like $35 a day or whatever. So I'm like, I don't have a phone. I just like go and look for the guy in like hippie pants with a skullet, which is what they told me to do. I find him like on the second day at this bar, and he's like, yes, and he's pretty spooky, like intimidating looking. Like he looks like the villain from Ghostbusters who comes out of the painting. Remember that guy? You seen that movie, Bill Murray? And so yeah, I booked a couple sessions at his place and recorded. And his studio was like a fortified straw hut with just like a tape deck and like a Tascam 4-track machine. But he was like a really good guitar player. And I recorded a couple songs which went on my first like kind of DIY release called In Between Exits. And he played lead guitar on a couple songs. He was really good. Yeah.
Did you stay in contact with him at all?
No, not at all. No. Not a guy you'd want to, not a good hang, you know.
Have you checked to see if he's got a website now or any kind of way that you can reach out and connect with him again?
He'd probably try to get royalties for his guitar licks. I'm not going to call him. I don't know.
Can you tell us about some of the differences between playing shows overseas versus here? Lots of great stories in the book about different shows and different venues, some interesting off-the-wall venues, but you really connected when you started kind of doing improv as far as writing songs about on the spot.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, yeah, some of the shows I did early on in Hong Kong and Cambodia were like, most of them were planned, but a few of them were just like breakout jams that would just happen at a party. Yeah, and I just started like making up songs and people would throw out song topics and I would just start, people would be like, donuts, Tall Paul is weird or whatever, and then I would make a little like 2-minute folk punk song about it, and I didn't know. I mean, they would come out all right. I was like, I didn't know I could do that, and like sometimes I would completely bomb, and sometimes it was good. But like, I think that all those like early shows were just great conditioning to like learn how to keep a crowd. How do people think? What do they react to? What do they think is boring? Am I talking too much between songs? Do I need to play a slow song and then a fast song, 2 slow songs, all those types of things. So when you're playing like some of the worst shows of your career in like hostile environments where people are drunk and speak 10 different languages, like it's a pretty good, it's discouraging, but it's also a good training ground.
Well, you also had some shows where you did quite well on selling CDs. You were a millionaire over there with the dong, right?
That's right. I had millions of Vietnam dong. This was kind of the last grasp of the CD era, and I know you guys have toured and you saw some of the glory of the CD era, Bricko, but yeah, I played in Korea and I sold like 25 CDs after some like pretty low-key DIY show. Maybe there was 40 people there and 25 of them bought CDs. I just had this what's the Korean currency? It's like won, or yeah, I think it's won. So I just had this stack of like Korean won that was like, I don't know, it was like millions of won, which was, I don't know, maybe it was like $250 or whatever, but it lasted me like 2 weeks, and I was like, well, this is like a model that I could ride on for a while. So that was kind of a moment that sparked just kind of like merging traveling and music together. It's like, well, I'm not going to just come out here and goof off. I'm going to like put tours together and kind of make it actually work for real.
Where did you keep your money to keep it safe? You weren't carrying it everywhere you went, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could have got robbed in any moment. And
well, you tell the story in the book. You got approached by a woman on the street asking if you wanted, I mean, they were child trafficking more or less. And
yeah.
You got a little mouthy with her.
That was pretty spooky. So there's this lady who was just like, yeah, basically like trying to hustle me, like originally trying to ask me for money and stuff. And I was like, I'll put this in the blog. Like, I'll talk to this lady. And yeah, she was like, I'll get you a girlfriend, and just like named all the ages of women that were available. It was super spooky. And I was like, I kind of like mouthed off to her. I was kind of like ripping on her a bit. And she like flipped a switch went off where she went from sales mode to just like completely psycho, and like started chasing me like down the street in Manila. And she called like a couple goons, and I ducked into like a sushi restaurant, and I was like hiding behind the counter behind the security guards. And I had to call. I had like two contacts in my phone. One guy from Couchsurfing who I'd met once, who was just a drunk dude, and then another guy who was like a mutual friend. And I called this guy Ben, who was like a local Filipino guy. And he's like, oh, yeah, dude, yeah, that's a sketchy area. Like, just stay there. I'll call you a cab. Like, check the plates when the cab comes. Just, like, run out there with the security guard. Just get in the cab and come to my house. So he kind of saved me and rescued me. But that was probably the spookiest travel experience I think I had.
Were your mom's words echoing through your mind when that happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think the more time goes by, like, nostalgia definitely amplifies things. Like, it amplifies the glory, and it amplifies the defeats, and it amplifies, I think at the time I was probably like, oh, this ain't nothing. But looking back, I was like, that was pretty sketch, yeah.
Well, it's funny, you put a screenshot on your social media some time ago that your mom said she was going to read the book or something, and you're trying to convince her not to read it. Has she read it yet? Well,
I think she got to like the first couple chapters, and she was like, hey, pretty funny, good writing. And I was like, how far are you? She's like, chapter 2. I was like, don't read the book. Yeah. And no, she stood good to that. So she had, got to take care of Mama Bear.
Are you thinking about your mom, your dad, when you're putting this stuff out there? Because there are some stories, a lot of stories in this book that it shows you in dangerous situations or doing things that they probably wouldn't want you doing. When you're releasing a book like this, are you ready to deal with the blowback that comes from some of this stuff? I mean, I wouldn't want my journals out there, publicly. Yeah, well, that was the number one concern, was like, how are my folks going to react to this? So I think my dad hasn't gotten through a full book since like Larry Bird's biography in '82. So I'm stoked and very honored he made it through with like his speedy brain. But yeah, I mean, as long as my mom doesn't read it, and I don't know what my dad thinks. Like, it's hard to have like deep conversations with your parents. So the fact that he like read the book is good. He knows like way more about me than if I ever would have like sat down and told him, face to face. It's kind of wild. Do you have any more books that you're working on, or any plans to release another one soon? I would like to. I mean, I have volume 2 and 3 written. So once we get through this pressing, we'll have enough bread to print another one. How are you editing these things? There's got to be some kind of edit that goes into weeding out stories that maybe wouldn't be a good read. How do you narrow it down? Well, I read through it a few times, and then I had a buddy, J.D. Eicher, who's a really good friend of mine, who's put out a few books himself, and is a musician. We're both on the same like touring circuit. So he went through it. I was like, make sure there's nothing incriminating or that makes me sound like a total dickhead, and he did a great job. So you're happy with how it turned out? I'm pumped. I mean, this was definitely the most fun I ever had making a book.
Piss in the Wind was, or making probably an arts project in general, and just like the routine of journaling and waking up. It's a good mental exercise. Even if you don't publish what you write, I think it's just great for the brain, you know?
If anybody has any questions, there's a microphone up here. I really don't think anybody's going to go up there to ask a question, but did anybody write any down?
All right. Give it up to Andy McNamara for hosting and bringing all the cameras. What a legend. What a pro. All right, I'll let you pick.
All right, first question. We'll mix them up in case you saw people going up there. If you could go back to one place, which place would it be? That's a great question.
I think my favorite place that I've ever been is probably Cape Town, South Africa. And definitely like one of the worst like music scenes I've ever experienced. Just like, I think the pace of life and how slow it is, and like, you know, it's a beach city, so people are just like, take things really slow. No one's on time, but it's just like a beautiful place to live, to tour and adventure. So that's the place I've been back to the most.
Do you have plans for another CD? And it's a two-part question, so I'll let you answer that one first.
Compact disc. Well, CDs are kind of dead, people. I don't know. Do you think there's going to be a CD revival? Yes. Yeah, well, you're my best friend, so you're just saying that. I don't know. I have a bunch of music at home I'm trying to put together and see what fits in what bucket and what to release, so for sure.
Are you always writing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm lucky enough to, for now, you know, be able to still do art as a job. So I take it pretty seriously. Like when I wake up early in the morning, I'm like, I try to like spend an hour to get used to the day, let the day kind of happen, but then like start getting into work, start getting into writing, songwriting, or painting or something. I feel like I need to make something happen, which I think is ultimately good, but ultimately can kind of like burn you out, you know?
Do you have a lot of stuff in the can? Like if something happened to you today, let's say you get in a car accident on the way home.
Yikes.
Do you have a lot of material that could be released for the future years? Brett Newski releases that are recorded.
Sure.
And ready
Kylie,
to go
I'll have
out.
to give you all my passwords and hard drives in case you'll be. I'll write you into the will. You can be the manager when I'm after I corpse.
So
Let it be noted.
You've got a lot of stuff that you.
Yeah, I got a bunch of songs, stuff in the can, trying to figure out what to do. I don't know.
Another question here. Tell us about the band you formed in Nam.
Oh yeah, so I had a band in Vietnam called Brett Newski and the Corruption, and it was a British guy and a Canadian fellow on bass, and we did 2 tours of the U.S. and we made a record. We made 1 album, and we recorded it in downtown Saigon. I think I have 3 copies left over there. It's called Tiny Victories, and we just made it in this like really tiny studio in central Saigon, which is just in the middle of this like live chicken and fish market. So you would just like, and there's just trash everywhere and like chickens running around, and we'd like go up these little Harry Potter stairs to the 2nd floor studio and like record the drums. Then the drummer would be like, I want a break, and he'd come on, like rip a cigarette, take a break. We'd go back up after seeing some chickens get their heads chopped off in real time and go back and record the rest of the album. Pretty weird times.
Sounds pretty inspiring.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the album's pretty good. I don't know. Does anyone have that? That was an album that no one really has. Yes. 2 grown men own it.
Next question. For us older people, what does choop mean? Am I saying that right? Choop?
Choop.
Choop.
So choop is kind of hard to explain. It's just a word we made up. My ex-tour manager, Danimal, and I, when we would drive around Europe together for way too long, months on end, and we would do Fred Durst impressions to each other. So we'd, kind of losing our minds in the car, and we'd just be like, cheer, motherfucking Limp Bizkit, what? Cheer, choop, choop, choop. And once we did that long enough, it like slowly devolved, and as we were going, cheer, cheer. I don't know how it happened, but we were like pulling into Oslo one day, and like the word cheer had like slowly devolved into like choop, choop, choop. And then I just phonetically said really slow, just choop. And our eyes lit up and we looked at each other and we were like, choop. And then we just would roll down our windows and drive around Oslo just like chooping people like choop, 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 choop. which is one of the most fun things you can do in Scandinavia because they're so stoic and like robotic and like anything weirds them out. So if you're just like chooping strangers, they just get so weirded out. But I think they liked it. You do that in America, you're going to get stabbed, you know?
In all your international travel, what is the weirdest thing you've eaten?
I ate, well, in Vietnam, they would put the anything in the soup, you know, anything in the pho. So they would use the whole cow or the whole chicken. So I definitely ate chicken feet. That's like a late night delicacy, specifically in the north in Hanoi. Well, there'll be a dude just barbecuing like the chicken claws, and he'll just have a whole rack of claws. And people buy them for like $0.25, and then you don't actually eat the claw, but you like eat the skin off the claw. It's not great. But yeah, they would put. I found a cow eyeball in a big bowl of soup once. Like they use it all, you know. Yum yum yum.
Nothing that you've tried to track down in the States. You're not.
No, I mean it's all possible, McNamara. The night is young.
If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice based on what you've learned from writing Piss in the Wind, what would it be?
I think that you just have time. You know, I think when you're young, the 20s are hard because you're just like, oh, what do I do? I need to make stuff happen. I'm, getting out of school. I need a job. There's certainly a strong narrative set up for you if you consume enough media or, older folks around you influence you enough. But yeah, you got time. It's good to take your time. I mean, you want to be ambitious and move the needle, but there's no rush. There's no point in rushing ever. As someone who's rushed a lot,
You're in Appleton, Wisconsin right now. I want to ask you about Mile of Music. What's your best Mile of Music memory?
Well, I don't know. It might be this. We're supposed to play Mile of Music this year, but we just found out my girlfriend Kate is pregnant, and the due date is Mile of Music Friday. So we may be on stage, and I may just have to leave like mid-show. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. That'll be wild.
That's exciting news. They don't even know how to react. I just want to clap again.
Thanks. Yeah.
So
Figure it out.
any talk of the name yet? Is it too early for that?
McNamara. Choop. Or Glombus. Right now it's just a blob, so we call it the Glombus, which is just a made up word because it sounds like a blob. So, but if anyone has any ideas, call into the show or just come talk to us now since you're only 4 feet away.
Sure, little Newski is going to read all about your wild travels and
that is weird to think
find all
about.
about what Dad did.
Isn't that trippy? Like, we don't know. Really, we know nothing about our parents. None of us really do, And now our kids are going to be able to like scavenge our Facebook since 2008 or whatever, and like, oh, you got drunk at a college party in Eau Claire, and it's going to be weird, but it'll be fine, I think. Ultimately, maybe it's better, I think it's always better to air your skeletons out, and that's one thing I've tried to do in writing and songs. It's just, and even just talking phonetically, literally in public has honestly been a form of therapy to me to just like, I did this and it was bad and I'm embarrassed about it, but there you go.
Well, I want to thank you for asking me to do this, and I want to thank Dave and everybody affiliated with Gibson.
Yeah, give it up to Papa Dave and the Gibson crew. This place kicks ass. It's really cool. Thank you, Dave. You're the man.
The book
Dave single-handedly, this town would still be a Bon Jovi town if he didn't step up and start this damn festival. I mean, the man deserves more credit than he gets.
The book is called Piss in the Wind. You can get it at newskimusic.com, right?
Yes, newskimusic.com, brettnewski.com, all goes to the same place. And I think everything goes to the band outside of the 5% overlord fee from Squarespace. There's a newsletter over here. If you want an update, we can keep you posted.
It's worth saying, too, your newsletter is pretty good, and you do put that out pretty regularly.
Yeah, I put out tour journals most Fridays and songs and the classic stuff, but I try to keep the new, fresh journals coming on Fridays. So if you're on the email list, you've probably seen them before.
All right. Thank you, Brett Newski.
You're the man. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for coming. This was really fun. Thank you so much.